Hello, I'm Ray, teacher and tutor, and today I want to talk about something that I care deeply about, and I think that more people need to know about this, especially when we're working with children or looking after children, etc., etc. And it's so long, I might just chunk it into sections. So I want to talk about willpower, discipline, and motivation. And first, I want to give you my definitions, not a dictionary definition, though they are slightly close together. So I've got willpower down as the strength or energy needed to do a task, whether it be hard or uncomfortable or easy. It takes a lot less willpower to do something that's easy. It takes a lot more to do something that's difficult. Then we have discipline, and discipline is where we do something in a habitual way, regardless of sort of how difficult it is. And finally, motivation, and that is the drive to do something. And I recently spoke about intrinsic motivation, which is the internal drive from the effort that you give. It's no secret that we all know that we should be disciplined and we want to get, to the end point of success. It's just very difficult to do it, and that's where willpower comes in. But I want to talk a little bit about that, and I want to talk about it from a personal point of view, which I don't usually do, but I'll do that first, and then onto how this will help children, how you can help them teach, learn, or even do things like their chores and the washing up. So I look at it as an equation. So motivation plus willpower is equal to discipline, and then discipline plus time is equal to the success or the goal that you're looking for. And this might be very obvious for some, it probably very much is, but how does that look? What does that look like in practicality? And this is what I'm going to talk about, what I do in terms of setting out my goals and how I achieve those goals using that equation to do so. So when I write out my goals, I think from the end point. So what do I want to succeed? What do I want to do? Then what do I need to do to get to that end point? And then after that, it's why do I do it? What's the motivation behind it? Now, we've covered the success. What do I want? What do I need to do? So that's the disciplined activity. And why do I want it? That's the motivation. But the willpower is the missing part. And how do we get willpower? Well, this is the topic that I really want to talk about, because this is often misunderstood or misrepresented when we're thinking about supporting children, making them more resilient, giving them more willpower. So talking about willpower, the first thing I would like to mention is that some people do have it easier than others. That is perhaps something that not a lot of people know about, but it is very true. Some people do have it easier, and willpower works as a bar. If you think of it as a bar of energy, bar of effort that you can put in, and throughout the day, your willpower decreases every little time that you have to do something, especially those things that you don't particularly like doing. So, for example, for me, I hate ironing. I haven't had to iron in a while, I'll tell you the truth, but ironing would take a huge chunk out of my willpower. So looking at things that can affect willpower and how it differs from individual to individual, there are things such as lack of sleep. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're going to have less willpower for the day, or perhaps even the week, depending on how, sort of behind on sleep you are, even though arguable that. You've got neurodivergency. If you're neurodivergent, you typically inherently find things more difficult to do that are outside your comfort zone. And that is something that we need to pay attention to when we are working, or, we have children who are perhaps have ASD or ADHD. They do actually find things more tough than we do. Trauma, child-based trauma especially, but any sort of trauma can make things more difficult. Also the difficulty of your day. If you've had to do a lot of tasks that are quite demanding, like I said about the ironing, it will reduce your willpower bar significantly. How resilient you are as a person. Some people have more resilience. They've grown up and been taught that resilience. Some people haven't. Feelings, your emotions, and I'm going to include hormones in there as well. That can really have an effect on how you interact and your willpower for the day, what you're capable of doing. We all know that a lot of the time. If we're having a bad day, we just want to sit down and have some chocolate or whatever our vice is. Your lifestyle. So the way you typically live your life can make uncomfortable and difficult activities even harder to do if you've not been exposed to that, such as let's just say a very wealthy person, maybe he's not used to standing in a line, going in any sort of queue, but if you were to put him in a queue outside a kebab shop at 2 o'clock in the morning, he will be quite annoyed and find it very difficult to do so. And then this one links in with trauma a little bit, but it's also exposure to difficulties in life. Now, trauma can make your bucket, well, as we call it, the bucket, it can fill it up quite high already. Your bucket is already part full. However, if you are used to doing activities that perhaps the average person won't have to deal with, those activities will be easier. However, other ones will be harder. So your exposure to certain things in life will make it easier for you to do, and it will make it harder for others, and vice versa. So all of these things sort of demonstrate how fickle willpower is and how difficult it can be to make yourself discipline, make yourself do things that you don't particularly want to do. It's like going to the gym after work, or for a child, if they've done a full day at school, especially when perhaps they've had a row with a few of their friends, to sit at home and then study for ages or do some extra reading they don't particularly want to do. That can be hard. It can very much be like flogging a horse, I believe the phrase goes, something like that. So the next thing is, how do we improve this? Well, I'm not a psychiatrist, that's quite obvious, but we have this thing called our bucket, which is a metaphorical representation of what our bar of willpower, essentially what's making us happy, what's making us sad, stressed, anxious, etc., etc. And what can we do in order to build up a willpower, drain our bucket, and make our lives a bit easier? So how do we improve willpower in our young people? And I will preface that I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. However, I've done a lot of work, and I've also worked with a lot of children who have social, emotional, mental health difficulties, as well as special educational needs, etc., etc. Using this and personal experience as well, because we're all human, whether we're little humans or big humans, we can use all these strategies to help us build willpower, discipline, etc. So the first thing that we need to do is reflect. So I'm going to talk about reflection. One of the key things that I do when I'm working with children is to build their emotional intelligence, because emotional intelligence is just as, if not sometimes more important than your academic intelligence. So what I'm talking about is understanding how you feel inside. That's, everyone feels a certain way. Everyone has emotions, whether you push them further down or you let them go to the surface. Everyone has emotions, and all emotions are okay. This is what I teach children. It's how we act on our actions that we have control over, and is the difference between right and wrong. So when we're thinking about willpower, we need to first understand how we feel about, in the present right now, but also how we feel about tasks, how difficult they are, and how difficult they will be for us in the future. So I brought up the bucket before. This bucket is a representation of all of our stresses, all of our worries, all of our hardships throughout the day, the week, the year, our lives, and it's full of water. Now what we need to do is poke holes in this bucket and drain it and make our lives a little bit easier, ease that pressure on ourselves. So one thing we can do is do things that we like. We can relax, but not sit there and do nothing, but relax, perhaps read a book, go and see our friends, go for a walk, take up a hobby and do those hobbies. You can go to the gym if that's something you find will drain your bucket a bit. Any of those sorts of things that make you feel better, those will drain your bucket. They will also ease up on how you feel about yourself, and therefore increase your sort of willpower bar, we'll call it. The next tip I'm going to give is about planning the day. Whether you're planning for yourself or you're planning for a child, you let them know what the plan is. Now, I know in a lot of our lives and jobs, especially for children, they have no control over what they're doing for the day. So this can make it particularly difficult. And you know what they say about plans. I think it was Mike Tyson who said, everyone has a plan until you punch in the face. And when you're working in a school, it is very much like that. However, where you can plan, whether for yourself or for your child, this can really help with how you separate those activities, how you can make it easier for yourself and your child, and not maybe stack everything difficult up in one day. Or if you know they've been on a school trip that day, or they've had assessments that day, perhaps don't give them something really tough to do in the evening. That's the time they need to start draining their bucket. They need to relax and do things they want to do. And perhaps when they have more willpower, then you can come back and do the difficult tasks. Personal note, is my birthday today, just to date this video, big 3-0, and very happy about it. But I decided to go in and do leg day at the gym and work really hard, because I know if I can't do it on the day that I'm happiest, my birthday, I'm going to struggle throughout the rest of the week. So yeah, plan your day, plan your week. Next point is about being kind to yourself, being kind to your children, and understanding, like I said before, if they've had a very tough day, don't force them to do loads of things that is really difficult, because all you'll get is half effort, tears, tantrums, the lot, and that can also ruin or put strain on a bit of a relationship. Or if it's something like reading, and they're having to read when they really don't have the cognitive capacity, it can then develop a dislike for reading, which we really don't want to do, because reading's wonderful, reading helps education, yada, yada, yada. So be kind to yourself. If you had a difficult day, it's fine. You can let it go just for today, or maybe a couple of days, and then bring it back. Okay. But it's important that you do it at some point. You can't just keep putting it off and putting it off. Next point links very well into the last one, which is accountability. Now, we know this word accountability, and a lot of people roll their eyes, but you do have to have some sort of accountability, because if no one's there to hold you accountable, often enough you won't actually do it. And this is particularly true for children. That's why when I were to work in a classroom or give them a task, I would let them know this is what I expect, make it very clear. I show them often enough what the outcome will be. Here's your time limit to do. And also, if you have trouble in any of these areas, you can use these resources, or you can come and ask me or partner or someone. That way, I'm giving them lots of ways to help themselves if they're finding difficulties, but they also know at the end of the day, or end of the time limit, that work will need to be done. And I believe I read in, I think his name's Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, where he made his child mow the front lawn or something like that, front garden, and gave him a deadline, said, I can help you, you can ask for help maybe once or twice, but it is your responsibility. I expect it to be done. And by making that accountability, you know very well, from whether it's your boss or your partner, you tend to work a bit harder to get that job done, because you're not just accountable to yourself. But in a scenario where you are accountable to yourself, just remember, it's a lot harder to lie to oneself than it is to others. So, it's only yourself that you're fooling. And finally, I find it's always helpful to go back to the why. And this is really important to do for children as well, because a lot of the time children will not get engaged with working if there is no purpose to it, or they will because the only motivation they have is that they have to get it done. If you want a child to do something and do it well, you need to give them a purpose and a reason why. And what's the point? Like, for example, if a child's studying geography in year 8 and they're not looking to take it on in year 9, they're not interested whatsoever, you can find a reason, find a purpose. You can say, you're learning time management skills. You are giving yourself options for the future. If you do end up doing very well in geography, you could add that on as a GCSE. You're giving yourself more strings to your bow. That's a little bit more knowledge than previously. You're developing discipline just by sitting here and doing something you don't want to do. You can essentially find purpose in anything. And if you really can't, then why are you doing it in the first place? But it's important that you make it purposeful. So when your child comes and goes, and we've learned about, Mayans in history, I don't see why we're bothering. Talk to them about the study, the whole skill of learning, and the benefits of just studying and sitting there and learning something. What have they developed? And you can also say, you've learned something about the Mayans. That's a bit of knowledge that might help you in a pub quiz one day. You never know. But it's there and you've learned it. So I know it was a long one today, but thank you very much for listening. If you've got this far, sorry if I kept looking down. It's because I did promise I'd try and script videos. So I've scripted it, but I can't remember it all on the top of my head. So hopefully you've enjoyed. If you've got any questions, please feel free to ask. If you feel like this could resonate with someone, please share and beyond. I am on a goal to get 1,000 followers because it's a nice round number and it's a good target. So let's do it. Thank you for all your help and support. Appreciate it. Take care.